Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an introduction to autism and its connection to gut health. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to everybody involved in making this series a reality. Thank you to everybody for their hard work for bringing together parenting during a pandemic. To all of the parents stuck at home during lockdown, during this COVID pandemic, it's been, I hope it's been really helpful to all of you. So I'm just trying to see who's online. Just want to say, if you have any questions, you can type it in the question box and I will answer any questions either as I go or at the end of this webinar. And I love questions. It makes the conversation really alive. And this topic is a topic very close to my own heart. Gut health and autism and healing our children. And so if anybody has any questions, please, there's no such thing as a silly question, so any questions that you have, please do type them in the box and I will answer anything that comes up. So just a little bit about me. My name's Ella Carey. I'm a nutritionist and a kinesiologist and I practice in London and remotely. And I have 3 boys, aged 13, 12 and 9. And when my son was born, my middle son, he had quite a traumatic birth and I lost quite a lot of blood. And we were both had to be given infusions, blood infusions, and both given lots of antibiotics as a precaution. And this started him off on a journey of bad gut health. He got eczema, he got all the infections going when my other 2 children didn't. He got pneumonia, he had to keep having repeat antibiotics all the time, chest infections, ear infections. And it was always him that had the difficulty. And then he got food sensitivities. And then as he got older, he got acute anxiety. And this led me to really exploring and discovering the power and the impact of gut health and the root cause of it, which was at his birth when we were both given antibiotics. And so this led me on the learning journey that I've been on. And now I work with hundreds of families whose children have ADHD, autism, anxiety, and all the different umbrella terms that lead back down to the gut and gut health. So that's a bit about me. So today we're going to be talking about autism, nutrition, diet, and gut health. And again, it's such a large topic, it's such a huge topic, and it's such an emotive topic that everybody's journey with autism and gut health is different. And so everything that I'm going to be saying today, I really try to condense my information to make it as pertinent to you as parents as possible. You can get very scientific with it and lose kind of the engagement. And so I try to make it as engaging and as pertinent as possible and as practical as possible. And so if there's any place that you have any questions or comments, please, again, do share them in the chat box. So the first thing that I would like to share with you is that the body is designed to heal. I wouldn't be doing the work that I do if I didn't believe this and if I didn't see this every day. So autism is a shattering diagnosis for thousands of families and the number is rising year on year. And along with this diagnosis, families are told that their child's autism is incurable and there's nothing that they can do about it. And it doesn't matter what they do. Their child's situation is fixed and it will remain fixed. But in my experience, I've seen hundreds of families and I've spoken to other practitioners who also have seen hundreds of families. They have seen autism be reversed and the symptoms be reduced. It doesn't happen with everybody because no 2 people are the same. But in my experience, there's nothing as undeterred as a mother's love. And a mother will look for all of the answers. And I'm sure you can relate to this, that you will not stop researching, you'll not stop looking for answers. As long as your child has a need, you are there to fill it. And so the mothers that I see, they know about so much to do with their child's diagnosis because they've researched so much. And invariably it brings them to my clinic or another nutritionist's clinic to work on gut health. And working together, we can report exciting improvements after implementing the protocol that I'm going to talk to you about today. So my message for you today is autism diagnosis is not a fixed sentence. With the right tools, the body can heal. And in so many cases, children with autism have a special something else to typical neurotypical children. You know, there's a sensitivity, there's a something. I see them as very special children. So just looking at the prevalence of autism, it's rising. So in 2004, it was this is in the US, in every 166 births, there was one child born with autism. In 2018, it's 1 in 59. And today, it's more like 1 in 30, so 1 in every class. We're just really looking at, so this jump, it's not stopping. This curve is not flattening out. It's getting sharper, if anything. So it's really helpful, I think, to look at what is going on. So there's no one fixed answer, as you will know by now. If you speak to different practitioners, they'll say different things. And today we're going to obviously be approaching from nutrition perspective. So from a nutritional perspective and the body's perspective, we're looking at rising toxic load on cellular health. So antibiotics, factory farmed meat, fast foods, pesticides in our food, pollutants in the water, blue light from the TVs and phones. And I do not want this to be a depressing or make you feel hopeless. I want for us to really look at the reality of things so we can look at how to protect ourselves and protect our children, and they can protect their children in the future. So looking at stress in the mother has been connected, or stress in the mother can suppress her immune system. And viral infections in the mother has been cited as a cause of autism. And that's another thing that we can do something about. If the child has a virus, or if they have a virus that's been switching on and off genes, there's a word called epigenetics, or there's a field of science called epigenetics, and it looks at switching genes on and off. So if you take home one message today, it's that nothing is fixed in the body, and nothing is stuck in the body. Everything can be healed with the right tools. So looking again then to the connection to our natural environment and time spent outdoors. And this is really important because this is really overlooked, in my opinion. We spend millions and millions of dollars and pounds on probiotics, probiotic food, probiotic supplements. But we can only put in medicine or probiotics or supplements these strains of bacteria that science has discovered to be beneficial. There are hundreds and thousands of strains that science hasn't even discovered yet, existing in nature. And humans are designed to live symbiotically with nature. And this divorce from nature, we're spending much more time inside. And as a consequence, we're not being exposed to the beneficial bacteria and to vitamin D levels that we should be. And vitamin D, we're going to be looking at vitamin D, but in my own clinic, I see so many parents, the mothers were working nights during their pregnancy and sleeping in the day. And so just because of their lifestyle, because of their career, because of their work, they were reducing their own vitamin D exposure. And so this has an impact on the membranes of the body, as you're growing your baby and you're vitamin D deficient, your membranes will be thinner. And so intestine membranes and the blood-brain barrier. And so toxicity can pass over much easier because that barrier is our barrier of protection. And if you don't have the vitamin D to create the cholesterol, to build the membranes, excuse me, then you're just not going to have that barrier as protective as you would be if you were outside every day and your vitamin D levels are really high. And then number 4, we're looking at the antibiotics versus probiotics. So we've been through an era of antibiotics for everything. I know that for my own children, by the doctors, I was offered antibiotics all the time. And at the early years, I would take them because that's what you believe to be the best thing. But as time goes on and studies and research develops, we are discovering that antibiotics, whilst they have been life-saving in certain cases, they need to only be used in an emergency. We are becoming antibiotic resistant, excuse me, and they also destroy the colony of beneficial bacteria in our microbiome, in our gut. And we're going to look at how important this microbiome is now. So again, if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to write them in the chat box. So what's going on and what can be done? Evidence is emerging as to the connection between gut health and the brain. Autism is one area which is being researched, and a gut healing approach is helping many children with autism to reduce their symptoms and live better quality of life. We'll be looking at the microbiome and how improving it can help reduce symptoms of autism. And we will look at simple and effective ways to improve the health of the microbiome. And this is just a headline from a research paper: single species of gut bacteria can reverse autism-related social behavior. So that just shows you how important bacteria is for our health and well-being, for our brain and our behavior, interestingly. So let's really go back to the start. What is the microbiome? The microbiome is an individual's bacterial signature, and it's as individual to each person as our fingerprints. There's no 2 microbiome signatures the same. It covers the whole body and it resides mostly in the digestive system. And it plays a role in everything from weight management, mental health, neurological development, and sociability. So it really governs everything. We're really understanding more and more just how important it is and how pertinent this invisible microbiome is to our health and well-being. I don't know if you can relate to, so I was talking to a doctor recently and she said, it's interesting because the first symptom of a urinary tract infection isn't necessarily pain, it's a change in behavior. And so that's when the infection and the overgrowth of the infection and the yeast and the fungus will take over the person's brain and behavior and change their behavior. And I find that fascinating. And often we see behavior as a mental thing or a learned thing. But actually, when we look at the microbiome, we can see that it can be acquired and it can also be changed quite easily through shifting and supporting the microbiome. So the microbiome is a community of bacteria, of yeasts and fungus. And the more diverse the community, the healthier the person. They say that in tribes in the Amazon jungle, they have strains of bacteria, so hundreds of thousands of more strains of bacteria than the person in the West, because they haven't been exposed to modern medicine. They haven't been exposed to antibiotics. So when the microbiome is damaged or compromised, we see a change in the person's health, weight, or development. What affects the microbiome? Antibiotics. Many children with autism have a history of ear infections and repeated antibiotics. Sugar affects the microbiome and can cause pathogenic, so bad bacteria, to flourish and overcome the beneficial bacteria. Stress suppresses the immune system and it causes our sugar levels in our blood to rise. And that can also feed the pathogenic flora. Early childhood trauma can adversely affect the microbiome. And I find that fascinating because it can set us off on a route of depression or obesity, and we link it to our trauma, but not in the way that we think. We don't necessarily link it to our trauma through our gut. We link it to our behavioral response or emotional response. High carbohydrate, low fiber foods, so McDonald's, cereals, breads, cakes, pizzas, that can affect the microbiome. Being born via C-section. So if you think about it, the woman's vaginal canal, the birth canal, is full of beneficial bacteria, and that will be the first exposure to bacteria that the baby gets as it passes through the birth passage. And if the baby is born via C-section, it doesn't receive that beneficial bacteria. In fact, it receives the bacteria that's on the doctor's hands, that's normally been touching other people, people with illnesses. It doesn't have that first protective bacteria from its own mother. So if anybody's pregnant or thinking about having a baby, and will have to have a C-section, there's something called seeding the baby, which is really important, and that's actually taking the bacteria from the birth canal and putting it into the baby's mouth. And that's a new way that practitioners are looking at protecting the baby's gut and microbiome. And then bottle feeding. So the external bacteria on the breast of the mother, on the microbiome of the skin, and then the internal microbiome just isn't getting to the baby through bottle feeding. So it's good if you're feeding your baby with a bottle, just maybe add some probiotics to the milk, and your baby can get the bacteria that way. So varying symptoms of an imbalanced microbiome. So through this, I wanted to just show you just how varied, how different the symptoms can be of an imbalanced microbiome. We might think we'll just have a tummy ache or loose stool or something, but actually we're looking down here at aggression, mood imbalance, asthma, eczema, food sensitivities, anxiety, depression, weight gain, obesity, failure to thrive, immune dysfunction, recurring ear infections, developmental or verbal delay, colic and reflux, bloating, diarrhea, and constipation. So they're really different. They're really a variety of different symptoms from mental, emotional, physical. So just having a quick look inside, and our keywords here are toxic overload, overwhelm, blood-brain barrier, intestinal membranes, and bacteria. Not very glamorous, I have to say, but so when we're looking at an imbalanced microbiome, let's start in the stomach. We have low stomach acid, and that can help or contribute to an overgrowth of pathogenic flora. There's constipation, the food isn't being digested properly, and we have a build-up of toxicity in the blood, and it can pass over to the brain. And if you think about a child with autism, they can get overwhelmed quite easily, and there's a sense of this toxicity, this toxic picture, that children with autism often are under methylators, which means they don't have the processes in their body are not functioning as a typical person who would be able to detox their own body very easily, much more quickly, much more easily. So if there's a buildup of toxicity, their body's naturally designed to get rid of this toxicity. But in a child with autism or a person with autism, this toxic picture builds up and up and up. And so the message here is that we want to be able to help the body to detox. We want to work on the constipation. We want to make sure that they are getting foods that they can digest easily, and they're not exposed to this highly toxic picture that's in our environment. So we're going to look at active ways that we can reduce the toxicity in your child's environment. And we're going supporting the friendly bacteria in the gut. If we're going to support the friendly bacteria, we want to give them fermented foods, so fruit and vegetables, avoiding antibiotics, avoiding meats with antibiotics in. So wild and organic meats are really fantastic, and this can help with the digestive health, immune function, cognitive development, sociability, weight and obesity, and mental health. And I mentioned before vitamin D and getting outside. Vitamin D deficiency, depending on what you read, which sources you read, vitamin D deficiency in the mother has been linked to between 2 and 4 times the risk, increasing the risk of autism in their child. And that is huge. And I feel that every mother should know this. So the message here is go outside daily, at least 1 hour a day, especially if you're pregnant. And if your child, no matter how old they are, from baby, getting outside is so important, even in the winter. So we're just going to have a look at a quick case study. This is a child that I worked with. She's 4 years old when her family brought her to me, and with an autism diagnosis, and she was non-verbal, no eye contact with the family, no verbal communication with the family. In fact, they described it as if she was in her own world and she didn't know that they were there. And obviously this is heartbreaking for the family. And they feel as if the mother said that she felt as if her child was inside a bubble, that she couldn't get inside and she couldn't connect with her child. And so we put her on something called the GAPS diet, which is gut and psychology syndrome. And I'm going to talk to you about the protocol further down in the webinar. And she went gluten-free and casein-free, so dairy-free, gluten-free. We did other things as well. But after 3 months on this gut healing diet, her grandfather opened the door to come in from work, and she looked up and ran towards him and said, "Grampy," with her arms open. And the mother called me, tearful, to tell me about this because it's such a huge moment. And so as you can see, our children are there. And if it's difficult to connect to them, if their behavior, if the way that they're being is difficult to connect to, it doesn't have to be like that. And there are ways to be able to help our child's body and behavior and sociability to move towards the family. And that can be through nutrition and diet. Not always, but it can be for many people. So the protocol for autism and gut healing is reducing the toxic load on the body, looking at environmental toxins and heavy metals, for instance, healing the gut through the gut healing diet, and rewilding the microbiome. And by that, I mean providing and exposing the child to more beneficial bacteria through food and through being outside. So removing and avoiding sugar, antibiotics, and antibacterial soaps, because that can damage the microbiome on the skin, and that can damage the microbiome. That's your first line of defense, and it can damage the microbiome inside as well. And now we want to include contact with nature, the wild bacteria in the soil is essential to human health. I know lots of parents don't like their child to get muddy, but please try and get past that and allow your child to be outside and to play outside as much as possible. Fermented foods have been used for hundreds of years as a way to preserve food, and only now are we understanding the extent of their benefits. So as much fermented food as you like, that really contains a lot of beneficial bacteria, but not only the bacteria, the fermenting process increases the nutrient content in the body, in the food. Eat sulfur and methionine-rich foods, so beef, poultry, eggs, and broccoli, for instance. Sulfur helps the body to detox, and that's really important in our children with autism. And Epsom salt baths. I put all of the families that come to see me, I would suggest Epsom salt baths, and the parents invariably report that their children are speaking more after having an Epsom salt bath, or sleep better. And this obviously helps to improve sleeping, will help appetite, will help mood, will help behavior. So it's really a positive cycle to start to access. So I just wanted to, this slide is just about the things that we should avoid. So this is cereals, and as a parent, I find it infuriating and frustrating to go into a supermarket, and this is the breakfast aisle, and it's nothing that my children can eat, or would I feed them. There was actually a study done, and they found that the contents in a cereal box was actually less nutritious than the box itself, which doesn't surprise me. But the fact that cereals are sold to families and children as a healthy breakfast isn't the case, and we must avoid them as much as we can and give our children real food. So here on the right, we've got eggs, we've got fruit salad and coconut milk smoothie. So those are just 3 ideas of the things that we could give children for breakfast time. But as long as it's real food and it doesn't come out of a box like that, that's what we're looking for. So this is just a way to reduce toxic load on the body. So what a lot of children, everybody's exposed to heavy metals these days, but children with autism have thinner membranes, and so toxins pass over into the blood and the brain more easily. And heavy metals, they are also drawn, we see higher heavy metals when we see higher levels of pathogenic flora as well, and they impact brain development. So in order to reduce heavy metals exposure, we want to look at removing aluminium in the home. So look at your labels of your soaps, of your perfumes, of your creams. If you see aluminium, don't use it in the house. Bleaches and things like that, and aluminium pots and pans. And instead we can use cast iron, stainless steel, natural soaps, and then fresh parsley or cilantro actually chelates heavy metals. So I add that to all of our food, fresh. I also have it in the freezer and add it to soups and stews, and it can really help to pull heavy metals out of the body safely. Reducing the toxic load in the home. So obviously we want to protect our children from antibacterial. You know by now how important it is to protect our children from anything antibacterial on a daily basis. So we often have antibacterial hand sanitizers, sprays, wipes. We don't want to use those because they'll kill the beneficial bacteria. And tea tree is actually, it's antiviral, antiseptic and antibacterial, but it won't kill the beneficial. It will just kill the pathogenic bacteria. So we want to look at using natural essential oils. So the recipe is equal parts white vinegar and water, so in a spray bottle. Add around 10 drops of an essential oil, and you can use lemon, tea tree, or lavender are really good ones, or lemon myrtle is a lovely one as well. And that's it. And you can use it as a spray, you can use it as an air freshener, and it won't damage your child's system, and it won't, and if anything, it will reduce the toxic load instead of add the toxic load. Another way that we can look at supporting our children's development is actually by being barefoot. And there's a school in Singapore who studied the benefits of their children being barefoot, and found that children learned, and their mood and behavior was so much better, improved so much, that they decided to use it as a policy, and parents would bring their children with learning difficulties to this school in order for their children to have the best chance to learn possible. And being barefoot was a big part of it, because when a child is barefoot, it stimulates both parts of their brain, and they're having this live feedback. And a lot of children with autism don't enjoy being barefoot. They don't like they have maybe sensory issues. But if you can encourage your child, maybe rub their feet, maybe put them on a soft carpet to begin with, and give them that engagement of having that live feedback and stimulating their brain, and give them a little bit more textures every day, different textures every day to enjoy putting their feet on, and hopefully bit by bit they'll enjoy being outside barefoot, and like that child on the rock. And if you can imagine, he's holding on with his feet, and if you can imagine what's happening in his brain for him and his nervous system for him to be able to have the skills to do that and the coordination to do that. So we're looking at spending time outside. 5 reasons to spend time outdoors every day. Higher vitamin D levels improve cognitive health, immune health, and endocrine health. So this is free, and a free way to improve our health and improve the outlook of our health in the future. High levels of vitamin D reduce the risk of autism. Number 3, wild bacteria found in the soil and on leaves help to populate the human body with strains of bacteria as yet undiscovered by science. Number 4, climbing, running, and playing in nature calms the nervous system, bringing the person into flow state, which is conducive to well-being. And I think this is really overlooked, because it's when we're in this flow state that our bodies are working perfectly in kind of like an orchestra together. And our nervous system is functioning well, and our learning, it's difficult to measure, but this flow state is something that scientists, artists, musicians all get into, athletes all get into, and children also get into this flow state when they're outside. I know that for my own children, they might complain taking them from inside to outside. Maybe they want to watch TV or play a computer game, but as soon as we're outside and they get into that flow state, they absolutely love it. And number 5, high oxygen levels outside. And this is important because oxygen improves stamina, improves memory function, aids learning, helps to detoxify the body. That's an important one for our children, and helps to build the immune system. And oxygen is so helpful to healing that hyperbaric oxygen tanks are available to access high levels of oxygen for healing a range of disorders, including autism. Hyperbaric oxygen tanks. So moving on to the diet and the healing protocol. So we have 5 pillars. So it's bone broth. We're hydrating the body with mineral water, eating fermented foods, reducing the toxic load, and having supplements. So zinc, B12, selenium, and probiotics, and also essential fatty acids. Children with autism have been found to be deficient in zinc and B6, so it's really important to provide those in their diet and supplement. So here's our recipe for gut healing bone broth. You don't have to use chicken carcasses or chicken feet. You can use any bones that you like, but they need to have the meat in, so the bone marrow. And I'll let you read this. You have the handout for this. So, and why bone broth? Because the gelatin and the collagen repairs the thin lining of the gut wall and helps to build up the blood-brain barrier and the gut wall. So even if our children are exposed to this toxicity, it's not passing over into the blood and the brain as it was. Amino acids are helpful for neurological health as well as development. They're the building blocks of the body. Minerals inside the bones help the body to make thousands of chemical processes. Also, they're really easily absorbed. In a child with autism or a child with an underfunctioning digestive system, it's difficult for them to digest and assimilate these foods. Taking out the nutrients of the foods and turning them into something useful for their own body is something quite complex. And so if you're taking bone broth, it's already there. The minerals are already there to be able to just be absorbed and used by the body with very little work required. Also, fermented food is a natural process fermentation is a natural process that turns foods like vegetables and dairy into an enzyme and probiotic rich food. Include it daily in your diet if you can. So here's an ideal weekly meal plan. And what we talked about earlier was the Epsom salt bath. So magnesium rich, sulfur rich. It helps to detoxify the body. It helps to calm the body. And the magnesium actually, magnesium has so many benefits to the body. It helps the body with so many different processes that the person who has the Epsom salt bath, their magnesium levels go up and they can sleep better, their skin is better. It's just all around fantastic. And so how you do it is you would get a handful of Epsom salts and put it in the bath, and don't use any soaps, don't use any chemicals. Well, by now we're not using any chemicals anymore. I'd like, after this webinar, I would love it if you could go to your cleaning cupboards and your bathroom cupboards and just take out anything that has any chemicals in and replace it with natural, so essential oils and natural soaps. And we use a lot more soaps than we need. We really don't need to use so many soaps, so many harmful soaps on our skin or around the home. So I hope this has been helpful for you today. If there's anything that you'd like to talk about, you can email me at this email address here. Anything that I have a shop on my website or links to things on my website where you can look at soaps and water filters and supplements and things like that if you'd like to have a look at that. And if there's any questions at all, please do write them in the chat box and I will do my best to answer everything that comes up. I'll just give you a few minutes. I hope this has been helpful for you. One question that I'm often asked by families. Thank you, Hind. Oh, thank you very much, Hind. You've been a regular to my other talks. I hope you found this interesting as well. So one question that I'm often asked is, my child won't eat anything but pizzas, crisps, and bagels. And your gut healing protocol asks that the child avoid gluten and avoid sugar and avoid processed foods, how can I make my child eat these natural foods, the fermented foods, the vegetables and the bone broth, if they only want to eat pizzas and bagels? And it's a very good question. It's a very real question. And I did another webinar on fussy eating, a whole webinar on fussy eating, because it's such a huge topic for parents. It's all very well asking practitioners, asking parents, oh, get your child just to eat these foods. But the reality is that if they won't, how can we ask them to do that? So fussy eating, the first thing I'd like you to understand is that fussy eating isn't your child being fussy, it's a sign of gut dysbiosis. That they have pathogenic flora or a yeast overgrowth or a candida overgrowth, and it's actually causing them to crave sugary foods, to crave starchy rich foods. So it's almost not coming from them, but it's coming from their gut, it's coming from them internally. And so as we change the internal environment in our child's digestive system and change the microbiome to lean it towards beneficial flora being more dominant than the pathogenic flora, they will stop craving the foods like the pizzas and the bagels and the crisps and the chips. And we can do that by very simple things, like giving them probiotics every evening, giving in some warm water, giving them even a teaspoon of bone broth every day before every meal. Looking at what I like to do with parents is ask them to write down everything that their child is eating every day for a week. And we're just simple things like swapping out, if they're having sugary drinks, swapping that out for maybe natural, freshly pressed apple juice, for instance, or coconut milk, or very easy swaps and substitutes that we can do for the first level. And that's going to take away, or that's going to minimize the sugar and the feeding of the pathogenic flora. And so if we do this over time and we start adding in the supplements, we start adding in very small amounts of the food that the beneficial food that they will eat, and we still allow them to eat the pizzas and the bagels and the crisps just for now, but we slowly over a period of about 3 months is what I work with families. We really see that the child will start accepting, especially if it's not a fight for them, and especially if they feel that they're in control of it and their children are choosing it. And so you give them the option. And so often children will naturally start choosing the foods that are good for them when their microbiome is more balanced and more healthy. I hope that answers that question for you. Another question that I'm asked is, my child doesn't want to go outside and just wants to stay inside. How can I get them to go outside, knowing how important it is, knowing the benefits of going outside from the wild bacteria and being in nature? So now that we know how important it is, how do we get our children to actually go outside? And so what I do with my children is I'll make a game of it. So the older ones, there's something called geocaching, for instance, and they love this. It's treasure hunting with an app, and you can find coordinates online, and people hide treasure there and in different coordinates, and so it's map reading. And so we make a game out of that, and you can find that online. It's geocaching. I'm going to type that into the chat box so you can have a look at that for the older children. And for younger children, I was just explaining this to my husband the other day, that I would use a book called We're Going on a Bear Hunt, and we're going to catch a big one. We're not scared. What a beautiful day. And I would take my children out and I would read this or recite this story to them as we're walking, and my children wouldn't imagine would no longer be out on the street walking down the road towards the park or the woods. They would be inside the story with me going on this adventure, going on this journey. So it's just making it more, just making it a bit more of a game, or saying to, you know, going on a treasure hunt is also really exciting for children. So whatever your child is interested in, you can always bring that into the story, into the rhyme, into the treasure hunt of what you're going to find. You can make it relevant to your child and make it more exciting. So I hope that helps and has given you some ideas. I know that today's webinar has had so much information in it, from looking at the microbiome to looking at fermented foods to looking at being outside. And I hope that it hasn't left you feeling overwhelmed, but I hope it's left you feeling inspired. And if there's anything that you'd like to discuss or ask, please do reach out, either here or privately. I'm just going to give you a few more minutes. And there's one more question that parents often ask me is about probiotics. And can they give? There's so many different types of probiotics. Which ones should they give their child? And the ones that I recommend are called BioCult. And I'm going to type that in to the chat box. And I recommend giving those on an empty stomach before bed in a bit of warm water. And this just gives a chance for the probiotics to really work in the digestive system overnight. And you should start seeing, once you start working on your child's digestive system and gut health, you should start seeing improvements like better eye contact, more words if they're nonverbal or starting to speak. You should start seeing better digestive health, so less constipated. And constipation is a really big one. We often see it as quite normal, or our normal regular pattern for our child maybe to be opening their bowels once a week or twice a week. But actually, constipation is a really, really important aspect of looking at our child's health. And we want our children to be opening their bowels twice a day. And so if your child is opening their bowels less than that, that's a sign that their toxic load is quite high. And so if they are opening their bowels less than that, Epsom salt baths are a really good idea, because that can be another way to help them to offload toxicity. Saman, hi. How can I give probiotics if my child is severely averse to most foods? So can you explain what you mean by severely averse? Is that they are allergic to, or that they just will not eat it? If it's that they will not eat it, Saman, does your child mostly eat what I said before? So the pastas, carby, starchy foods, so pastas, breads, cakes, bagels, crisps. What food will they eat? Lots of rice. Any vegetables, any soups? No, okay. Yeah, so it's very typical. We're looking at, so it's that carbohydrate, starchy rich foods that feed the pathogenic flora. So yes, this is so normal. It's so typical. Crisps, it's crunchy, and it has that it's like so many children. And I met one child who only ate Wotsits for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we got him eating a gut healing protocol. We got him eating the foods on the gut healing protocol over about 3 months. So does your child drink from a cup or an open cup or a glass? And how old is your child? Eight. Okay, so if he's 8, it might take a little bit longer, just to say, because the younger that they are, the quicker their digestive systems can kind of bounce back. And so what I would do is I would put some probiotics in a little bit of water in the evening, and he can drink, if he can drink that. Does he drink water? And yes, fantastic. So just probiotics in water at night. And then what I would do is things like, if he's only eating rice, I would cook the rice, try a little bit, because one thing that I find with parents, it's very disheartening when you make food and you cook food and then the child just point blank refuses it. So I often say, let's make a small amount of this new food for them to be able to try to see if they'll take it. So I would make the bone broth and then cook the rice in the bone broth. So you're getting all the minerals and the glutathione and the magnesium in that bone broth, and you're cooking it in the rice, or the rice in the bone broth. And so he can have that. And I wonder if he'll take that. And so maybe we'll go back to just having a quick look at looking at the meal plan for the gut healing. And so if he'll eat any meat or fish, it's a really good idea to, what I like to do with parents is to write out exactly what they will eat and start from there, because it's really upsetting for children, and they'll develop a power struggle with their parents if they feel that their parents are trying to change too much too quickly and that they don't have enough choice. And so building on what they do like, and as I said before, as you start changing the microbiome and the environment internally, what they crave will change. And Saman, your child wanting only to eat rice and crisps isn't him being fussy, it's that he has gut dysbiosis, and he might have constipation, and he might have a bloated belly, and he might have other things, other symptoms that you'll see that point towards his gut dysbiosis. You know, I wonder if he's had a history of antibiotic use, for instance. There's a lot more to look at. And as I said before, this isn't, everybody is so different, and every approach needs to be so different, and every child needs to be supported in a different way so that their individual needs are met, and their case, their particular picture is looked at and supported. What can be substituted for rice and bread? Well, at the moment, I wouldn't necessarily immediately jump to substituting rice and bread. If he's only eating crisps and rice, for instance, I would cook the rice in the bone broth, and I would make it more easily digestible for him by soaking the rice overnight, which starts to break down the starches, and actually it makes it easier for him to digest, and it has less of an impact on his blood sugars. But to answer your question, what I substitute for rice, I use things like quinoa, or I use cauliflower rice. So you get a cauliflower and you kind of put it in a food processor, and it can turn it into a rice, and that's really lovely. But for somebody who's at the moment in this beginning phase of their journey and they're only eating, like you say, crisps and rice, he might reject that at this point in his journey. Bread, I use flaxseed crackers. There's a really nice coconut bread that I use. There's lots, I'm going to put it in the chat box. So there's a recipe book called The Gut Healing Diet by Hilary Boynton. Heal your gut. And you can, any recipe in that book you can use on your children. Is there any advantage of caffeine in keto diet? Not for children. Caffeine, can you explain what you mean about the caffeine? The keto diet, the principles of the keto diet are really helpful in that they take out the sugar, they take out the refined foods, they take out the processed foods. But for children, I feel that a whole, just it's really important that they're having a wide variety of foods. Children do need a lot of fat. If you look in the Hilary Boynton Heal Your Gut book, you will find lots of recipes that are really nutritious and really helpful for children. They touch on the keto diet, but it's not completely the keto diet. I don't prescribe to any formula of diets because I feel that, as I've said, everybody's different and everybody needs different things. I understand, okay. So caffeine for attention deficit disorder. Caffeine has so many other impacts in the body and strips the body of things like magnesium. And magnesium is so important in helpful development. So if you look at, so caffeine is kind of forcing the body to do something for a short amount of time. And it's a drug, but it will have a detrimental impact on the body, and the body will actually need to work harder to get itself back up to the same level as it was before. So for attention deficit disorder, again, the same approach of probiotics, gut healing, zinc, and looking at your child's picture. So Saman, what I might be very tempted to do is a stool test for your child to look at what bacteria they have in their gut. Looking at a heavy metal test, you can do a hair test, for instance, and then a urine test for organic acids. And so those 3 tests will give you a really good picture of what's going on in your child's body, what they're missing, what they need. So instead of kind of, it takes away any guessing, and we're just really seeing your child and exactly what your child needs. I hope that answers that question. You're so welcome. Thank you so much. And if you want to reach out to me privately for a conversation about your child, you've got my email address, and we can talk about him and what might be helpful for his individual case. So it's now 8 o'clock. I'm going to be signing off in 1 minute, and it's been such a pleasure to speak with you. I hope it's left you inspired. And thank you so much for your questions. Oh, there's one more question. Can you please post the email address here? Absolutely. So it's info@fullspectrumhealth.work. I hope you received that. I know that my screen isn't sharing anymore. If you just say yes, just to let me know that you've got that. And if I don't have a response from you, I'll contact the organizers and ask them if they can pass on my email address to you privately. Okay, so I'll contact the organisers because I haven't had a response here. And I want you to be able to get the answers that you want to get and that you're looking for. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you to Bright Start and to the UAE and everybody for organising these fantastic series. And I hope to see you next year. Okay, have a lovely day, everybody. Bye-bye.